Polar bears, Arctic icons in an era of climate change. Introduction, the polar bear's unique position. The polar bear, also known as the white bear, Ursus maritimus, is a large mammal belonging to the order Carnivora, family Ursidae, and is the largest land carnivore. Adult males can reach an astonishing weight of up to 1,700 pounds, approximately 770 kilograms, equivalent to a horse or a small aircraft. They live exclusively in circumpolar regions, spanning the Arctic Ocean and coastal landmasses of 5 nations: the United States, Alaska, Canada, Greenland, Denmark, Norway, Svalbard, and Russia. With their powerful presence and extraordinary adaptability, polar bears have been dubbed the king of the Arctic, becoming an indispensable symbol of this icy land. The polar bear's significance extends beyond its ecological role to global influence. As apex predators, they play a crucial role in maintaining the balance of the Arctic ecosystem. The presence of a healthy polar bear population is a vital indicator of an intact food web and a thriving habitat. Therefore, polar bears are considered a sentinel species for the overall health of the Arctic environment. Any decline in their population serves as a clear warning signal of profound changes, potentially causing cascading impacts throughout the entire ecosystem. Beyond their ecological role, polar bears are also a global symbol of strength, courage, and resilience. However, in the current context, their image has become an even more powerful symbol, representing the global climate change crisis. Images of polar bears isolated on melting ice floes have created a strong impact, raising awareness and calling for environmental action worldwide. The connection between their role as apex predators and their status as a symbol of climate change has further elevated the importance of polar bears, not only in species conservation but also in broader environmental and global policy discussions. Although the image of polar bears is often associated with the risk of extinction in media and public perception, it is important to understand their official conservation status. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, has classified the polar bear as vulnerable on its red list of threatened species. The vulnerable classification indicates that the species faces a high risk of extinction in the wild, but it differs from more severe categories such as endangered or critically endangered. This distinction is necessary to ensure scientific accuracy in reporting while still emphasizing the serious threat the species faces. This status demands urgent and effective conservation measures to prevent further population decline. 2. Remarkable biology and adaptations. 2.1. Evolutionary origins and relationship with brown bears. Polar bears are a relatively young species in evolutionary terms. Genetic and fossil evidence suggests they diverged from a common ancestor with brown bears. Ursus arctos, between approximately 300,000 and 900,000 years ago, during the Middle Pleistocene epoch. Some DNA studies even estimate that this divergence may have occurred at least 150,000 years ago. The expansion and contraction of Arctic ice during glacial periods played a pivotal role in this process, creating strong selective pressures that drove the development of specialized traits for the icy environment. Despite the distinct physical differences between polar bears and brown bears today, particularly in coat color, the genetic differences between them are very slight. This indicates that polar bears underwent rapid adaptation to the sea ice environment, developing significant physiological and morphological changes in a relatively short evolutionary period, while their brown bear relatives maintained their typical terrestrial lifestyle. A clear demonstration of the close genetic relationship between the two species is the ability of polar bears and brown bears to interbreed and produce fertile hybrid offspring. This phenomenon has been documented in the wild, with a notable case being a wild hybrid bear shot in 2006 in the Northwest Territories, Canada. This bear, often referred to as a Pizzly or Growlar bear, was identified through DNA analysis as the offspring of a polar bear mother and a brown bear father. The hybrid bear exhibited mixed characteristics of both species, the overall white coat of a polar bear but with brown patches, brown eye rings, a slightly dished face, extra long claws, and a slight shoulder hump, typical traits of a brown bear. In the context of climate change, the Pizzly bear phenomenon is becoming increasingly significant. Warming temperatures are causing brown bears to expand their range northward, encroaching into areas previously occupied only by polar bears. This overlap in habitats increases the likelihood of interbreeding between the two species, leading to a rise in hybrid individuals in the wild. The emergence of hybrid bears is not only an interesting biological phenomenon but also an important indicator of changing habitats and the evolutionary pressures both species are facing. It demonstrates biological flexibility in response to a changing environment but also raises questions about the genetic future and distinct existence of the separate species. It should be noted that North American black bears, Ursus americanus, have a distinct evolutionary origin and are not closely related to brown bears and polar bears. Genetic research indicates that North American black bears diverged from a common ancestor approximately 5.05 million years ago, belonging to a separate evolutionary lineage. 2.2 Physical adaptations to the extreme cold. Polar bears possess unique physical and physiological adaptations that allow them to survive and thrive in one of the planet's harshest environments. Specialized fur. The most striking feature of polar bears is their creamy white fur, which provides perfect camouflage in their snowy and icy habitat. However, their fur is not actually white but colorless and hollow, similar to white hair in humans. The hollow structure of the hairs helps them insulate effectively by trapping a layer of warm air inside, forming a natural insulating cushion. Interestingly, when viewed under ultraviolet light, this fur appears black, a characteristic that reindeer, which can see in the UV spectrum, can perceive, helping them distinguish polar bears from their surroundings. Thick fat layer and physiological adaptations. Beneath their thick fur lies a layer of subcutaneous fat that can be up to 10 centimeters 4 inches thick, accounting for up to 50% of the bear's body weight. This fat layer not only provides superior insulation, helping bears withstand temperatures as low as -50 degrees Fahrenheit -45 degrees Celsius, but also serves as a massive energy reserve. This fat layer is particularly crucial for bears to survive through periods of food scarcity, especially in summer when ice melts and food becomes harder to find. Additionally, the thick fat layer helps bears float naturally while swimming, significantly conserving energy during long journeys at sea. Efficient fat metabolism may be the most important adaptation of polar bears. They have developed special physiological adaptations, including larger livers and kidneys, to efficiently metabolize the high-fat content of their seal diet. The ApoB gene, a key gene involved in lipid metabolism, shows significant adaptation, allowing polar bears to process a high-fat diet without developing cardiovascular, kidney, and liver diseases commonly seen in other carnivores on high-protein diets. This ability also helps them avoid excreting excess nitrogen from protein, as urea in urine, thereby conserving significant water and energy in a freshwater-scarce environment. Polar bears live in a polar desert, with limited access to fresh water, especially during the colder months. To address this, they can obtain additional fresh water by processing body fat to produce metabolic water, a mechanism similar to how camels use stored fat. Low surface area to volume ratio and small extremities. Compared to other bear species, polar bears have a stocky build, proportionally shorter legs, and smaller extremities such as small ears covered in thick fur, a very short tail, and a relatively short and squat muzzle. These features help minimize the surface area exposed to cold air, thereby reducing heat loss to a maximum. Large paws and locomotion adaptations. Polar bear paws are very large and wide, acting as natural snowshoes, helping to distribute their body weight so they don't sink into snow or break through thin ice. The underside of their paws has pads and dense hairy areas that help drain water and increase the contact area with the ground, improving grip and stability when walking on snow and ice. Their walking style, known as a transverse gallop, also helps them maintain stability on slippery surfaces, ensuring efficient movement without falling. Exceptional swimming ability and acute senses. Polar bears are excellent swimmers, capable of being found in open waters up to 200 miles (320 kilometers) from land. They swim by using their front legs to pull through the water, while their hind legs typically trail behind. However, long-distance swimming is very energetically expensive, especially for young bears. To hunt in the vast and often dark Arctic environment, polar bears possess acute eyesight, excellent hearing, and an exceptionally keen sense of smell. They can sniff out a seal from 32 kilometers away and detect a seal's breathing hole in the ice from 800 m away. Diet and metabolic regulation. Polar bears are specialized carnivores, entirely dependent on sea ice to hunt seals, their primary, fat-rich food source, including ringed seals and bearded seals. Spring is their most crucial hunting season, when they utilize the thin ice over the continental shelf to build up fat reserves, preparing for the lean summer months when food is scarce. When food is scarce, polar bears can slow their metabolism to survive, although they do not hibernate in the traditional sense like brown bears. However, during the period when mothers are in their dens caring for cubs, typically from January to March each year, they will not eat, drink, or defecate. Temperament and social behavior. Unlike brown bears, which are often aggressive and territorial, polar bears are known for their peaceful nature and actively avoid conflicts or territorial disputes. If any rival encroaches on their territory, polar bears typically prioritize fleeing to protect themselves and their offspring rather than engaging in direct confrontation. This behavioral difference reflects their distinct survival strategy in the Arctic environment, where avoiding conflict can be an advantage for conserving energy and avoiding injury in harsh conditions. 3. Conservation status and serious threats. 3.1. Current population status. Polar bears are currently listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. The global estimate for the current polar bear population ranges from approximately 26,000 individuals, with a confidence interval of 22,000 to 31,000 bears. Of these, about 60% of the population resides in Canada. The polar bear population is not a homogeneous entity but is divided into 19 relatively discrete subpopulations, distributed throughout the circumpolar region. The status and trends of each of these subpopulations are assessed annually by the IUCN/SSC Polar Bear Specialist Group, PBSG. Recent studies show diverse population trends among these subpopulations. Hudson Bay, Canada. This is one of the most heavily affected populations. The polar bear population in Hudson Bay has decreased by approximately 30% since 1987. More specifically, the western Hudson Bay population declined by approximately 50% between 1979 and 2021, primarily due to climate-driven sea ice loss. The number of polar bears in Hudson Bay is currently around 935, a 22% decrease from 1,200 in the 1990s. Beaufort Sea, Canada. The polar bear population in this region has decreased by 25 to 50% over the past 50 years. Davis Strait, this population likely decreased between 2007 and 2018. Barents Sea, Chukchi Sea, and Fox Basin, these populations are assessed as having stable trends. Arctic Basin, Baffin Bay, and East Greenland, data for these populations are limited, data deficient, making it difficult to determine precise trends. Overall, despite some stable or data-deficient populations, the general trend indicates significant declines in many key areas, especially those directly affected by melting ice. 3.2. The greatest threat: climate change and sea ice loss. The greatest and most urgent threat to the survival of polar bears is the loss of sea ice due to climate change. The Arctic is warming at twice the global average rate, causing severe consequences for the habitat and survival cycle of this species. Impact on hunting ability and starvation risk. Sea ice is the essential hunting platform for polar bears, where they ambush seals, their primary fat-rich food source that helps them store energy. As sea ice melts rapidly and ice-free months extend, polar bears have fewer hunting opportunities. This leads to significantly longer fasting periods. Reduced body weight also decreases their survival chances during the cold winter, a time of food scarcity. Although polar bears can switch to eating bird eggs or reindeer when on land, studies have shown that the caloric intake from these sources is insufficient to compensate for the energy required. Therefore, the risk of polar bears starving to death is very high, and studies predict that many populations could face starvation by the end of this century. Impact on reproduction. Climate change also directly affects the reproductive capacity of polar bears. Female bears can only conceive and give birth if they reach a body weight of over 200 kilograms. If the hunting period on ice in Hudson Bay falls below 8 months in a year, female bears will not be able to reach the necessary weight. Research shows that if the ice melts 1 month earlier, about 40 to 73% of female bears will not be able to give birth. If it melts 2 months earlier, this rate will increase to 55 to 100%. Energy deficiency also leads to mothers having fewer cubs throughout their lives, reduced litter sizes, triplets become rare, single births more common, and cubs facing lower survival rates if they do not gain enough weight during the shortened hunting season. Future projections. Modeling based on annual temperature increases shows a bleak future for polar bears. If the Earth's warming rate continues as it is, an increase of 3.3 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels, many polar bear populations will no longer be numerous enough to sustain reproduction by around 2040. By 2100, almost all polar bear populations globally will become too small to reproduce and will be nearly extinct. Experts warn that over 30% of the global polar bear population could disappear in the next 35 to 40 years. Even the last ice area, the region containing the thickest and oldest ice in the Arctic, stretching from Canada to Greenland, is projected to thin significantly by 2050 and could disappear entirely by 2100 under the most pessimistic greenhouse gas emission scenario. Other threats. In addition to climate change, polar bears face several other challenges, including increased commercial activities, human-wildlife conflict, pollution, disease, inadequate habitat protection, especially denning and seasonal resting areas, and the potential for overharvest in smaller or declining polar bear populations. These factors, while not the primary threat, contribute to the species' vulnerability. 4. Cultural significance and symbolic role. 4.1. Polar bears and Inuit indigenous culture. In the rich culture of the Inuit people, the polar bear holds a special place, both sacred and powerful. The Inuit call the polar bear Nanook, in Inuktitut, and consider it the spirit of the polar bear. Nanook is seen as the king of the Ixinactuit, a group of fearsome animals including polar bears, grizzly bears, and wolves. Additionally, the Inuit have many other names for this animal, reflecting their deep understanding and reverence, such as the ever-wandering one, the one who walks on ice, and the Great White One. Nanook is believed to control the fate of hunters. Those who hunt without respecting the rules will be punished, while grateful hunters who show respect will be blessed. Hunting and rituals of reverence. Some indigenous Arctic communities still hunt polar bears as part of a subsistence lifestyle and long-held cultural traditions. Bear meat is used for food in winter, and the fur is used to make boots, hammocks, and trousers. These hunts are now carefully monitored by regulatory agencies. Traditionally, the Inuit believe that every living thing has a spirit, and that spirit remains with the body for a time after death. After a polar bear is hunted, its body is treated with the utmost respect, and funeral rituals lasting several days are performed. Offerings are made to the bear's spirit. For male bears, the ceremony lasts 4 days with offerings such as knives, bow drills, and other hunting tools. For female bears, the ceremony lasts 5 days with offerings such as knives, skin scrapers, and needle cases. The Inuit believe that hunters who show respect for the bear they have hunted will have good fortune in future hunts, while those who do not will be unsuccessful and may even fall ill or suffer other misfortunes. Human-like traits and intelligence. The Inuit admire polar bears for their strength, patience, inquisitiveness, speed, and the devotion of mothers to their cubs. One reason they are revered is that they share many traits with humans. For example, when polar bears walk, their back paw prints often overlap their front paw prints, giving the impression that they are walking on 2 feet like humans. In fact, polar bears can stand and walk on their hind legs, and have a somewhat human silhouette when standing upright. Other human-like traits include walking on the soles of their feet, unlike most animals, leaving full footprints when walking, using their paws to bring food to their mouths, and sitting or leaning against something as if resting and thinking. Some Inuit believe that polar bears have intelligence equal to or greater than that of humans, and that their ancestors learned seal hunting techniques by watching polar bears. There are many Inuit legends depicting polar bears as humans in disguise, who would shed their bear skins when entering their igloos. Legends and moral lessons of Nanook. The stories surrounding Nanook not only reflect the Inuits' relationship with their harsh environment but also convey deep moral lessons. Nanook, the guardian of the Arctic. One legend tells of a young Inuit hunter who, after successfully hunting his first polar bear, forgets to perform the ritual to thank the bear spirit. In the following hunting season, he repeatedly fails. Realizing his mistake, he holds a large ceremony to apologize to Nanook, and from then on, his hunts become successful again. This legend teaches that respect and gratitude towards nature are essential to maintaining balance. Nanook and the Lost Children. This legend illustrates Nanook's compassion for the weak and those in distress. A group of Inuit children get lost in a snowstorm and pray for help. A giant man in a white fur coat appears and leads them back to their village. After they are safe, he disappears among the icebergs, revealing himself to be Nanook, who is not only a powerful spirit but also a protector. Nanook and the Festival of the Bear Spirit. The Inuit hold a sacred festival after hunting a polar bear to return its spirit to Nanook. They place the bear's head and hide in a place of honor, accompanied by prayer rituals. The Inuit believe that the bear's spirit will report the hunter's actions to Nanook. If the hunter performs the ritual correctly, the spirit will praise them, and they will have good luck in future hunts. Conversely, if the hunter is disrespectful, Nanook will take away their good fortune. This festival is a way for the Inuit to maintain a harmonious relationship with nature. Nanook and the Aurora Borealis. The Inuit believe that the dancing lights of the aurora borealis are Nanook and the spirits of deceased bears playing or dancing in the sky. A story is shared about a young Inuit girl who, while watching the bright aurora, dreams of Nanook. He tells her the lights are a blessing from the bear spirits, provided people live according to the principle of respecting nature. Relationship with Sedna. Some legends also describe a complex relationship between Nanook and Sedna, the goddess of the sea. Sedna rules marine animals, while Nanook controls the land and ice. They once had a fierce battle over territory, causing blizzards and great waves. Eventually, they reached an agreement to maintain a balance between the sea and the ice, which explains the natural stability of the ecosystem, crucial for the Inuits' survival. Nanook is not just a mythical figure but a symbol of strength, courage, and protection. The legends and ceremonies related to Nanook teach future generations about the importance of ethics, respect, and a harmonious relationship with nature. 4.2 Polar bears in global culture. Beyond their deep significance in Inuit indigenous culture, polar bears also hold various symbolic meanings in global culture. They are often considered symbols of strength, courage, and good fortune. Their image evokes warmth and majesty, frequently appearing in stories, films, and popular products, solidifying their status as a beloved and admired animal worldwide. When compared to brown bears, the symbolism of bears has interesting similarities and differences. In Celtic culture, brown bears symbolize the warrior class. For the Ainu people of Japan, bears are ancestors, and in Chinese culture, bears embody yang energy, representing power and authority. However, in some contexts, bears, in general, are also associated with monstrous, cruel aspects, or are sacrificial animals in religious rituals, and are considered by psychoanalytic philosophers, like Jung, as symbols of the dangerous side of the unconscious, related to the world of instincts. This distinction shows that while bears in general can carry complex meanings, polar bears are often perceived with more positive qualities, especially their survival ability and resilience in harsh environments. The conservation efforts and future directions. 5.1 International and national conservation initiatives. Polar bear conservation requires close cooperation at both international and national levels. One of the most important foundations is the 1973 Agreement on the Conservation of Polar Bears, signed by the 5 polar bear range states, PBRS Canada, Denmark, representing Greenland, Norway, the Russian Federation, and the United States. This agreement came into force on May 26, 1976, and successfully eliminated overharvesting, which was the primary threat to polar bears at the time. In addition to the general agreement, several bilateral cooperation initiatives have been established to manage transboundary polar bear populations. Canada-United States Memorandum of Understanding, MOU 2008. This MOU aims to enhance coordination and cooperation in the conservation and management of shared polar bear populations. It established a bilateral oversight group comprising high-level government officials and representatives from indigenous organizations, to develop and coordinate cooperative conservation projects. United States-Russian Federation Commission. This commission is responsible for managing the Alaska Chukotka polar bear population, making management decisions and setting harvest limits. For example, since 2018, the annual harvest limit has been set at 85 polar bears. Canada-Greenland, Denmark Agreement, signed in 2013. This agreement aims to coordinate the protection of polar bear populations living in the area between the two countries, which is one of the most severely threatened populations. Inuvialut-Inupiat Agreement, 1988. This is a management agreement between the Inuvialut people of Canada and the Inupiat people of Alaska, United States, to manage the southern Beaufort Sea polar bear population, ensuring the health and stability of the population and maintaining sustainable harvesting for traditional users. Canada's role. Canada plays a particularly crucial role in polar bear conservation efforts, as it is home to approximately 2/3 of the global polar bear population. Canada adopts a collaborative approach, sharing responsibility with provinces, territories, and regional wildlife management boards. A unique aspect of Canada's approach is the integration of Aboriginal traditional knowledge (ATK) into research and management decisions. ATK provides valuable information on polar bear abundance, movements, and behaviors, offering a long-term perspective on population changes. Canada is the only country in the world that integrates ATK into polar bear management and conservation, which helps ensure that harvest quotas are set sustainably. In 2011, the polar bear was listed as a species of special concern under Canada's Species at Risk Act, SARA. Role of scientific and non-governmental organizations. The IUCN/SSC Polar Bear Specialist Group, PBSG, plays a key role in compiling scientific information and providing independent advice to policymakers and management authorities. They are responsible for determining the status and trends of polar bear populations annually. Non-governmental organizations such as the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF, are also actively involved in conservation efforts. WWF's Arctic program, in partnership with Natural Habitat Adventures, has organized Climate Change in Our Wild World tours to Greenland, Churchill, Canada, and the Amazon. These trips aim to raise visitors' awareness of the impacts of climate change and encourage them to become advocates for environmental protection. Additionally, organizations like ENV in Vietnam conduct campaigns to reduce the demand for bear products, though primarily focusing on other bear species, by strengthening law enforcement, addressing legal loopholes, and reducing consumption demand. 5.2. Habitat protection and impact mitigation measures. The most important and overarching solution to protect polar bears is reducing greenhouse gas emissions to control climate change. Without decisive action to slow global warming, other conservation efforts will only be temporary or insufficient to save the species. In addition to emission reduction, other specific measures also need to be implemented. Establishing protected areas and safe zones. Large-scale protected areas and safe zones need to be created to safeguard critical areas in the polar bear's breeding and living cycles. These areas not only help preserve populations but also facilitate their breeding and hunting activities. Maintaining the Arctic marine environment and sustainable management. Sustainable management of key areas in the Northeast Arctic marine environment is crucial to reduce pressure on the polar bear's natural habitat. This includes minimizing the risk of pollution from oil spills and strictly managing commercial activities in the region. Continuous research and monitoring. Ongoing research and monitoring programs on polar bear populations and their habitats are necessary to provide timely scientific data, helping managers make informed decisions and adjust conservation strategies as needed. Creating education and public awareness programs. Raising awareness about the critical status of polar bears and the importance of conservation will foster support and commitment from the community. Educational programs can encourage cooperation and joint efforts to protect this animal. International cooperation and environmental policies. Continuing to strengthen international cooperation and developing robust environmental policies are prerequisites for addressing transboundary threats such as climate change and pollution. 6. Conclusion, a call for urgent action. Polar bears, resilient symbols of the Arctic, face an uncertain future. Their vulnerable status, coupled with significant projected declines in the coming decades, especially in critical populations like western Hudson Bay, serves as a stark warning about the fragility of the Arctic ecosystem. The close link between polar bear survival and sea ice is undeniable. Sea ice is not only an essential hunting platform but also directly affects their reproductive capacity and survival. The loss of sea ice due to climate change is pushing this species to the brink of starvation and irreversible population decline. To protect polar bears, a strong global and international cooperative effort is needed. While agreements and bilateral arrangements have achieved some success in managing hunting and research, the primary threat of climate change remains. Therefore, the most urgent and decisive action is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on a global scale. Additionally, establishing large protected areas, sustainably managing the marine environment, and enhancing research and public education are also essential steps. The future of polar bears is not just a story about one animal species but also a measure of humanity's responsibility towards the planet. Their survival depends on our ability to recognize and act to protect their natural habitat, especially by addressing the root cause of climate change. Protecting polar bears is not just about preserving a rare species but also about safeguarding the ecological balance of the Arctic and demonstrating our commitment to a sustainable future for all species on Earth. Thank you for accompanying me throughout this video. If you find this video interesting, please subscribe to the channel to watch more videos about animals.